Today we're going to be talking about cellular respiration. So you'll see some figures here. Don't worry about those yet. We'll talk about what those all mean in a second. But if you don't have your notebook out, go ahead and grab it. So today we're going to be looking at the reactants, products, and the equation for cellular respiration. You'll notice this is similar to the photosynthesis one up top. So everything that you know about photosynthesis, you need to know about cellular respiration. Before we talk about cellular respiration, we have to talk about where organisms get their food. We've just talked about photosynthesis, which is where some microorganisms get their food, right? So they make their food using sunlight, water, CO2, and that's how they make the glucose. Okay, so all organisms need food, and we'll talk about why they need food in a second. Animals, people, you and I, we eat food. We don't do photosynthesis. But either way, we're both getting food, just two different ways. Okay, either we make it ourselves or we eat it. The reason this food is so important, we have to look at, well, what happens to our food once we eat it? And you might tell me, well, we get energy. And that's true. So organisms convert their food to energy, and this is the big idea when it comes to cellular respiration, okay? Cellular respiration is taking our food and converting it to energy, okay? So once we get our food from either eating it or from photosynthesis, we have to convert it to energy. All right. So what type of energy do organisms use? It's something called ATP. So ATP, make sure you write this down, stands for adenosine triphosphate. You might look at that and say, hey, tri, sounds like tricycle, right? Tricycle has 3 wheels, so tri means 3. Phosphate, we know that sounds like phosphorus, right, on the periodic table. So it's going to have 3 phosphates. So you'll look down here, 1P, 2P, 3Ps, 3 phosphates. And then this whole part is called the adenosine part. So this is the energy molecule that's used by living organisms, okay? So when we talk about an organism having a lot of energy, we're talking about them having a lot of ATP. The problem is we need to get our food and we need to convert it into this molecule. We need to have a lot of this ATP energy so that our bodies and our cells can perform correctly. So ATP, okay? ATP is like a battery. You don't have to write anything down from this page, but I just wanted to show it to you. It can be recharged. So here's what happens. When we have a charged molecule, a full battery, it's got the 3 phosphates. Those are those little yellow parts. When we want to use that energy molecule to do some work, like maybe we want to build a protein, okay? In order to get the energy, we break off one of the phosphates. So you see that down here, okay? Now it's kind of like a dead battery. Doesn't have any energy, but we can recharge it and we can make it a charged battery again, make it an energy-rich molecule. And all we have to do is add that phosphate back on. You'll see water here. Remember we talked about in order to break apart molecules, we got to add water, okay? And if we want to connect molecules, we release water, okay? All right, so why do we need all of this energy? Well, we need energy for everything that we do. So we use it to make DNA, RNA, and proteins, okay? We've talked about transcription, translation, how we make those proteins. We need it for moving molecules. We talked about active transport, right? Endocytosis, bringing something in, exocytosis, bringing something out. Muscle contractions. You need energy to move your muscles. And then sending and receiving nerve signals. So thinking, touching, feeling, all of those. So we basically need energy for everything we do. And remember, cellular respiration is converting our food into energy. So let's write down what cellular respiration is now that we've been talking about all this other stuff. So cellular respiration, process of converting sugar, glucose, into ATP energy. Some people look at this word and they say respiration, that's breathing. Well, it is if we just use respiration. Cellular respiration is just the idea that we're converting sugar into energy. It doesn't have anything to do with breathing, okay? So I know it's a little confusing. This happens in the mitochondria, right? So in our cell, we have these squiggly guys. These are called the mitochondria. You might have learned that they're the powerhouse of the cell. The reason they're called the powerhouse is because they convert sugar into power or energy. So they're making energy for the cell. We need to know the equation. I'm going to have you write this equation down. So we start with sugar here, C6H12O6, that's glucose. Okay, 6 oxygen. So we need sugar and oxygen. If you get confused, think about what humans need to make energy. Well, we breathe in oxygen and we eat food, which has glucose. Then it's converted into water, CO2, right? We breathe out CO2, and ATP. Remember, that's our energy. If you're somebody that likes the words as well as the chemical formulas, you can go ahead and write the words down below. I'm going to move on to the next slide, so pause if you need more time to write. All right, so which organisms use cellular respiration, right? Remember cellular respiration, taking food, turning it into energy. All organisms. Sometimes people get confused and they think, oh, plants do photosynthesis, animals do cellular respiration. That's not true. Plants do cellular respiration too. In fact, all organisms do cellular respiration. Why? Because all organisms need energy, and this is the way that organisms convert food into energy. All right, last thing, we're going to compare photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So photosynthesis is the equation up here. Cellular respiration is the equation down here. Take a second, tell me, what do you notice about the two equations? I used some different colors here, but can you see they're opposites of each other? Almost, right? So photosynthesis starts with water, CO2, sunlight. Cellular respiration ends with water, CO2, ATP. Well, sunlight and ATP, those are both forms of energy. Okay, so they're similar in that they've got H2O, CO2, and energy. It's just a different form of energy. Here we've got sunlight, here we've got ATP. Photosynthesis makes sugar and oxygen. Cellular respiration starts with sugar and oxygen. So remember the whole goal of photosynthesis, take sunlight, make food. Once we have that food, we can use cellular respiration to take that food and make it into usable energy, okay? And that usable energy is called ATP. Here's another little diagram that shows this, right? A tree does photosynthesis, okay? From photosynthesis, it creates oxygen and glucose. And then plants and animals use those oxygen and glucose and they break it down to make ATP energy. And then they also make CO2 and water. And then the plants can use that to do more photosynthesis. So it's a loop, right? And trees and plants, right, use the CO2 and the water that animals breathe out. And then animals are able to use the oxygen and the glucose that's created by the plants.